everyone. So today's spooky reading vlog, I'm going to be reading your horror recommendations. A while ago, I asked on my Instagram if you guys could recommend me some horror books. I have not looked at them, so we're gonna be going through those recommendations right now. I feel like I wanna have a mixture of ones that I have already heard of before, and then also some that I've never heard of before. Hopefully I can get both. I am starting this a little bit early, so I have time to order all of these books. So let's just take a little look at all of these responses. The very first one that comes up is Crossroads, which I can't think of what that is. Let me look it up. I'm gonna assume that this is the book that they mean, Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. I know that Laurel Hightower is a horror author, but I've never heard of this book specifically. It says, how far would you go to bring back someone you love? When Chris's son dies in a tragic car crash, her world is devastated. Until one day, a small cut on her finger changes everything. A drop of blood falls from Chris's hand onto her son's memorial, and later that night, Chris thinks she sees his ghost outside her window. Ooh, okay. It has a very high rating on Goodreads. It has a 4.17, which is pretty high for horror. Oh, and a lot of my friends gave it 5 stars. Okay, so this is gonna be one of the books, and I'd never heard of it before, so that's great. Let me keep looking. Things have gotten worse since we last spoke. I've already read that. It feels weird for me to say that I loved that book because it is so disgusting, but I enjoyed it. House of Leaves. I don't know that I want to read House of Leaves. That book really intimidates me. Ooh, okay, Stolen Tongues is mentioned by a couple people. I do not know what this book is about, but I do remember when I did my Reading Booktubers favorite books of 2021 earlier in the year, this was a book that was on a couple people's lists. I remember it came up a few times. I can't remember from who. It was the first time that I'd ever heard of it. So this is by Felix Blackwell. It looks like it's a monster creature horror, which is always a fun time. So let's do that one also. And then let's pick one more. I actually counted, and the most recommended book in here is something called Come Closer by Sarah Gran, which I've never heard of. So the fact that several people recommended this is very interesting. It looks like this is a demon possession horror, which I always love. How have I not heard of this? The fact that so many people recommended this to me and I've never heard of it before, and it's a possession horror. What is going on? Why was this book hiding from me? So here are the books that I've chosen that were recommended. Once they all arrive, we can start reading them. I'm so excited. I feel like this is a really good selection. A lot of different kinds of horror here. I'm feeling good potential from all of these. All right, so I've now gotten all 3 books in that I'm gonna read. I feel like if I had to guess which ones I'm gonna like the most, my guess would be this order. I think I'm gonna like Come Closer the best because I love demonic possession. Then Stolen Tongues next. It really reminds me of Near the Bone by Christina Henry, which I love. And then, not that I think I'm not gonna like this, I just feel like this would be the one that is least likely to be a favorite. For the next week, I'm gonna read all 3 of these books, and hopefully y'all gave me some good recommendations, and maybe I can get a 5-star out of one of these. That would be ideal. So I'm going to be starting Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This is a really short novella. I'm on sprints with Megan and our patrons right now. I feel like I can finish this during these sprints. But yeah, this is about a mom whose son dies in a car crash, and then it says, a drop of blood falls from her hand onto her son's roadside memorial, and later that night she thinks she sees his ghost outside her window. Is it really her son's ghost, or is it something else, something evil? I've heard a lot about this author. I know she's written a bunch of other horror novellas that I've heard good things about. I just finished. I don't know how I feel yet. I need to think about it for a little bit. I feel kind of sad. Like, the ending just leaves me feeling very, like, depressed. I'm still on sprints right now with Megan. So next, I'm gonna be starting Come Closer by Sarah Gran, which is a possession horror. But I'm gonna need to think about this a little bit before I decide how I feel. So we'll talk about this later. Crossroads. I really liked this. So basically what this is about is this mother's son dies in a car crash, and she goes to visit the site of the accident every single day, and one day when she's there she accidentally cuts herself and spills some blood on the ground, and then that night she sees the ghost of her son and he's talking to her, and she realizes that if she keeps making these blood sacrifices at that grave site, then she's able to see her son and like he can come back to her. However, whatever it is that she is communicating with keeps needing the sacrifices to get bigger and bigger. It's not just satisfied with drops of blood anymore. So the sacrifices keep getting bigger in order for her to continue communicating with her son. It's pretty straightforward. There's not really like twists and turns, but the writing is so good. And he does this thing where he just like backs into me. Like he thinks if he backs up that I can't see him. Yeah, the writing was beautiful. I would say that this isn't really like a scary horror. It's more of like a haunting, depressing read. Also huge trigger warnings for self-harm. I think I'm gonna end up giving it 4 stars. I think in order for me to give a horror novella 5 stars, it has to be shocking. Like I need some sort of shocking element to it, and this just didn't have that. Nor do I think that was the intent of this, but that's what I need in a horror novella to be 5 stars. So this was 4 stars. The writing was amazing. I definitely want to read more from Laurel Hightower. And like I said, I started Come Closer by Sarah Grant. I did not get very far into it at the end of those sprints, but this is a demon possession book. This one is an interesting thing because this was the most recommended book out of all of these that I'm reading in this video, and I'd never heard of it before. But since I bought it, I've been seeing it everywhere. I guess it's just kind of like the thing where you actually see a book places, but until you are aware of the book and like register it, it doesn't even exist. So I'm sure I've heard about this in people's videos and I just wasn't paying attention because I'm seeing it everywhere. I think I'm giving this 5 stars. Oh my god, this was so good. So essentially, this is about a girl who is being possessed by a demon, and she's slowly realizing that, and she's blacking out a lot. She's losing periods of time. It's very short and sweet, which I feel like was like perfect. This is one of like the perfect examples of, for me, for like why horror novellas work so well. Because like had this been any longer, it would have felt tedious and very repetitive, but it was just like the perfect length. I also feel like this is definitely more of like a psychological book because you're really just in the main character's mind as she's like fighting for control. I really loved there's a quiz in here that's, are you possessed by a demon? It's like one of those quizzes in like the back of a magazine, you know? And she takes the quiz multiple times throughout the book to like rank how possessed she is. The quiz is a list of 10 questions, and then however many you say yes to, that determines if you're possessed. So the questions are: 1, I hear strange noises in my home. Number 2, I have new activities and pastimes that seem out of character. Number 3, I'm short and ill-tempered. Number 4, I can understand languages I've never studied. Number 5, I have blackouts not caused by drugs, alcohol. Number 6, I have unusual new thoughts or hear voices in my head. Number 7, I've had visions or dreams of personalities who may be demons. Number 8, a psychic or minister has told me I'm possessed. Number 9, I have urges to hurt or kill animals and other people. And then number 10, I have hurt or killed animals or people. So it's very interesting throughout the book to have her like keep referencing that quiz and being like, oh, okay, I only said yes to 3, I'm not possessed. When she hits a full 10 out of 10, shit hits the fan. I feel like this really packed a punch, and it had the kind of horror endings that I love. And I just, like, I have only good things to say about this. I absolutely loved it. 5 stars, amazing. And I understand now why this was the most recommended book to me and why so many people wanted me to read this. I've also, since then, ordered Sarah Grant's new book, The Book of the Most Precious Substances, which I'm so excited to read. This one sounds like it's about magical book of sex rituals. It says a mysterious book promises unlimited power and unrivaled sexual pleasure. If book dealer Lily can find it, it's the sale of a lifetime and maybe a ticket to a new life. It's a 17th century manual on sex magic, rumored to be the most powerful occult book ever written. Does that not sound amazing? Oh my god. I feel like Sarah Grant has the potential to be a new favorite author. This recommendation went so well. I have been listening to the audiobook of Stolen Tongues. While I was listening to it, I was playing Animal Crossing and cleaning up my island, which, like, let me just say, I don't know if I've even talked about this on here. I recently got a Switch last month. I got Animal Crossing. I'm obsessed. Playing Animal Crossing while I'm listening to audiobooks is a game changer. It is absolute game changer, especially when I'm doing like the menial tasks. Like, I just completely cleaned up my island, all the weeds, planted a lot of plants, moved around trees, did all that kind of stuff. I'm on chapter 10, which is 76 pages into the book. So I listened to quite a bit while I was doing that, and I'm enjoying it so far. It definitely has very creepy vibes. This is about a couple named Felix and Faye, which interestingly is the author and his wife's name. They are also Felix and Faye. He named the characters after themselves. And I believe that this book is heavily inspired by his relationship with his wife and a sleep disorder that either him or his wife has. I'm not 100% sure who. But anyways, it's about this couple who go to this like romantic weekend getaway in this cabin in this like snowy mountains, and while they're there they start hearing these very disturbing voices outside the house. They see figures. There's obviously something like haunting, sinister going on. Yeah, the vibes are scary. It was kind of a weird combination of like listening to this audiobook that's very creepy and then playing Animal Crossing that's very cute and cozy. It is going by very quickly. I actually didn't even realize that was how much I read. So yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. So I'm halfway into Stolen Tongues now, but I did just get 2 packages in the mail, so I thought I'd open them with you guys. First one, I know exactly what it is. Oh my god, you can kind of see a sneak peek. I mentioned in my come book shopping with me video that I was looking for like a nice edition of Edgar Allan Poe's stories. And there was a specific one at Barnes & Noble that I really wanted, but it was like $25. But I found it on Pango Books for like $10. Look how beautiful this is. Like, amazing. I am obsessed. And it is the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. Like, I feel like this is a book that needs to be displayed. And then this other one, it's another book I got on Pango, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, Daphne by Josh Malerman. Oh my god, I want to read this so badly. This is Josh Malerman's new book. I'm very like mixed on Josh Malerman. I have loved some of his books and then I've hated some of his books. So I'm curious to see what I think of this. It's a slasher about this woman named Daphne who stalks a high school basketball team. I don't know, sounds good. So that was my little book mail. Okay, I finished Stolen Tongues. This is gonna be a negative review. I have a lot of thoughts about this. So let's start with the positives because there's fewer of them. So the prologue of this book was amazing. Very creepy. I feel like the prologue as a short story would have been perfect. After finishing the prologue, I was like, wow, this book is gonna be amazing. This book was successful at being creepy and creating very scary, tension-filled moments. The idea that there's like this figure in the woods watching this couple, like they know that it's there, but they can never like catch it, and they hear voices outside their window. That just like freaked me out, okay? And there were certain scenes that I was getting a little creeped out at, which honestly does not happen for me reading horror. I don't really find myself getting scared, but I did get a little creeped out during some scenes. So those are all the positives. For the negatives, the things that ultimately made me not like this book. Number one, the characters felt very, very flat. Their personalities were giving nothing. It was like chicken with no seasoning, not even some salt and pepper, just like dry ass chicken. And I really didn't understand their thought process behind certain decisions. It also got very repetitive. I feel like the length of this book was a detriment because it was the same scenes over and over. They would go to sleep, then they'd get woken up because they'd hear a noise, and then they'd see a shadow, and then they'd go back to sleep, and then the next night they would hear a noise and see a shadow. It was just over and over the same scene. Now, for the parts that actually made me angry. Okay, so this book, the creature or the entity that is stalking them is from Native American folklore. There are a bunch of Native characters in this book and Native histories, but throughout the book I couldn't help but feel like it was just leaning so far into these like stereotypes, and there was something about it that was just really rubbing me the wrong way. But I don't feel like I am like knowledgeable enough to really like pinpoint why I was feeling weird about it. And then at the end of the book there is an essay that the author wrote called A Word on Natives in Fiction. It is an 8-page essay, and it's also in the audiobook. And it's basically the author talking about his initial reservations of writing from Native experiences, writing Native representation, his desire to avoid stereotypes and exploitation. And he just goes on and on and on. He mentioned how he consulted a bunch of his colleagues asking for their opinions, and unanimously they all said don't do it, but that he decided to do it anyways. He talks about how this story has been up on a Reddit thread for years and no one has ever mentioned anything bad about the Native representation. It reads like him being like, oh, I know all the problems, I'm just gonna do it anyways. He even says in here, I know that some people are gonna be mad, but like you can't please everybody. This little essay just put such a bad taste in my mouth, and it was like just so self-masturbatory of him like patting himself on the back, of doing the bare minimum, talking so much about how he didn't want to include all these stereotypes, he didn't want to steal culture, he didn't want there to be any like exploitation of the Native characters in this book. But that's exactly what happened in the book. There's 4 Native characters in here, and all of them fit into this stereotype of like the wise Native who's just there to educate the white main characters. And 3 out of the 4 of them died. The only people who died in this book were the Native characters. And I'm just like, you literally did all the things that you just wrote in this stupid ass essay that you didn't want to do because you knew that they were wrong. Initially, when I had finished this book, I was like, oh, 3 stars. But that little essay just put such a bad taste in my mouth. I was so annoyed after listening to that I'm gonna give this 2 stars. I don't know, I personally would not recommend reading this. Like I said, I'm not an authority or like can actually speak on if it's good rep or not, but that essay at the end just really put a bad taste in my mouth and made me feel so uncomfortable. And it really felt like just him like covering his ass. So if anyone brings up any criticism, he can like point to this stupid little essay and be like, yeah, here's my response. So this was a fail. 2 stars, don't recommend. So that is going to conclude this vlog of me reading your horror recommendations. Overall, it was successful. I enjoyed 2 of the 3 of them, and we had a 5-star, so I would call it successful, even though I did hate one of the books. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!